It's race week. Yes. Finally. Good God almighty damn. It has been way too long, but it's almost time, Kyle. Welcome to the 5th episode of the David Lamb podcast. Going to be IndyCar heavy, but we are going to be talking a few things outside of IndyCar, namely Fontana, and Kyle wants to get us on the F1 subject. So I guess we'll get on the F1 subject at some point today. Good to see everybody in the chat. Kyle, how's your week been?
Well, I've been playing a lot of NASCAR 15. A new Skrillex album dropped since 2014, and I've been listening to that. And NASCAR race day is going live in person again at Bristol, so I feel like I'm 15 again. It's been a great week.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. There's actually a video coming, hopefully tomorrow, because I've been working my proverbial bippy off on it. I kind of went back in time as well, and I am doing a retrospective on the 2005 St. Pete race. And it's really it was kind of an interesting like rewatch, and it was so much fun to me to like immerse myself in that world, because like I think a lot of like that era of IndyCar has been overshadowed by the split, and rightfully so. But I looked back on that and said, well, God bless America. Like in 2005, we had 2 different chassis manufacturers, 3 engine manufacturers. We had a lot of big sponsors, good looking cars, and a schedule that was 80% oval racing. And I said, you know what? That wasn't too bad. So, it's funny too, because it's like 2005 IRL is like literally the opposite of what it is now. And that's good things and that's bad things. And hopefully that video will be kind of an interesting look into that era and kind of how it recontextualizes this era that we are currently living in. Kyle, how old were you in 2005? Just
I would have been, I think 4 turning 5 probably.
Oh dear God.
3 turning 4. I don't know.
That's a problem. Speaking of nostalgia, wow. I did not realize how upset I would be about I mean, I knew I would be mad, but I was mad on behalf of the fact that we're not going to get to see another 500-mile IndyCar race at Fontana. What I did not realize until this weekend was how much I'm going to miss cup cars on the 2-mile Fontana, because wow, what an enjoyable race. In fact, enjoyable 2 races if you count Xfinity. I'm very disappointed, Kyle. I know why they're doing it. It's $500 million of land. Yeah. $150 million more than I keep wanting to cuss. The bloody Indy 500, not only the Indy 500, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the series, the $150 million less than that was the money they got for Fontana.
Does that at least make you feel better a little bit?
Oh, hell no.
No,
that makes me feel worse.
Does it
in a lot of ways.
It doesn't make you feel better that like, oh, at least it was $500 million. The reason we're getting
no, because nothing is sacred. They're going to build an Amazon warehouse on Fontana. I hate it. That's the worst. This is like the worst thing that could possibly happen to Fontana. I mean, I understand like it's not going away for sure, but like, I don't know, man. I don't want to see a short track.
So you're not very confident in them actually building a short track, is what I'm hearing.
So, okay. So that's an interesting discussion, because it seems like some people, they were definitely dancing around the issue on Fox yesterday. That it seemed like sometimes they would say, oh, well, this is the last race at Fontana. And then sometimes it would be the last super speedway race in Southern California. And then sometimes it was the last race on the 2-mile track. What do you think's going to happen here, Kyle? Do you think NASCAR actually sold all the land, or do you think they're actually going to hold on to a small parcel to not only build a racetrack, but do you think that racetrack's actually going to get done?
I think they'll hold on to a small parcel, or I mean, it's tricky because now that like whatever they're doing, they've said is at least going to take 2 years until we get a race in that region of California. And the discussion we had on whether or not the Clash should be a points race and the urgency from NASCAR to get a race in California makes me think that they really value having a race in that market.
Mhm.
So that could be good news in them actually wanting to put a short track on that land and keeping the land. So it's tricky, but at the same time, it's like with how much that land is worth, are they going to build a short track or are they going to see, hey, we can make more money and we can put a points race at the Clash and we can
Oh,
in
oh,
turn make a boatload of cash and just do that. You take the easy road that maybe a lot of people won't like, but it's the easy road and it makes a lot of money.
oh boy. Oh boy. You just put out a scenario which is
Mhm.
worse than
Well,
previously I had worried about.
it's NASCAR. What'd you expect?
Well, I mean, it's true. You're not wrong, but I mean, I had sat here and I've been thinking this entire time with NASCAR. You mentioned it, you brought it up. NASCAR has an obsession with California. They have had an obsession with California essentially ever since they got a taste of the Hollywood apple in the mid 90s. Um, I I always envisioned the reason that not only the fact that they can get $500 million, as we found out a couple days ago, but I always thought that them doing a short track as the finale is something I they think the fans want. But I think NASCAR is sitting there going, well, how do we make that in California? Well, I've thought that they want to put together like a Hollywood finale. Like it's the perfect NASCAR thing. It's like they can promote it, they can get all the stars out, have the finale at a short track in California, at a track that they own, and one that they can use more than once a year, unlike the Clash. It's interesting. It's very interesting to see where things are going. And God, could you imagine if it's just gone? That's a scenario I hadn't really considered that greatly, but when you laid it out like that, that hurts. That hurts a
Yeah,
lot.
it really does.
I love because here's what's kind of crazy to me is the fact that we are now down to what, four super speedways in the country now with and when I say super speedway, there's some debate on what that is. Um, I consider it an oval track over 2 miles. Well, I guess we have five. I almost left one out. We're down to five now in the country: Indianapolis, Daytona, Talladega, Pocono, and Michigan, and that's it. We lost Texas World, obviously. I mean, that was never coming back, but that sat dormant for a long time, and now Fontana is going the way of the dodo. So I hope property values don't go up in the what do they call that? I almost call it the Finger Lakes, but that's not right. I lived on the East Coast, and now I can't remember what the damn Pocono Mountains are called. But the Poconos, of course.
Yeah. What?
How stupid am I? I hope property values don't go up in the Irish Hills of Michigan or the Pocono Mountains because we will quickly be down to three. I will tell you this, Kyle. Since you and I took that random trip to Talladega, Talladega's never going away because I guarantee you the property values out there in the middle of nowhere are not nearly $500 million.
No, not at all.
Talladega's safe. Talladega will be the cockroach. That one will survive longer than probably even Indianapolis, if I had to guess.
But you're not wrong.
Dear. Well, Kyle, how about this? What was your favorite race at California Speedway?
Well, we did this last week, but the 2015 IndyCar race, obviously.
Yeah, I would tend to. Oh, we did do this last week. Was that a super chat? I feel like that was a super chat.
Yeah.
Shout out to whoever did that super chat because you were great minds think alike. I would tend to agree. And I did. I mentioned. Now I'm remembering. Yeah. I mentioned the 2002 IRL race
because
that was a fun one.
Yeah, I had 2011 Cup, and then you changed my mind. But that 2015 IndyCar race was just perfect because you couldn't. It got a lot of criticism for being a pack race, but it but it wasn't. Like you had to run the top to save your tires. If you ran the bottom for too long, you couldn't run it forever. Like they were packed up, and it looked like a pack race, but there was lifting, there was tire strategy involved, and it just it was a great show all the way through. I don't think, and given the Fontana races that we had in IndyCar the years before that, it was just such a shock to see that, and it was just it was a shame that was the last one.
It was a hell of a way to go out, though.
Yeah,
hell of a way to go out.
and I'm so mad that we never got to see the new body kits there and we've never seen the IR18 body style on a D-shaped 2-mile super speedway like that. So
frankly, we haven't even really seen them on a 1.5 mile track that has more than one lane. So
yeah,
that's kind of the big disappointing thing for me. Well, there's a couple of things that disappoint me about like IndyCar and Fontana. If we're talking about that, I mean, there was a time when, and it's not even that long ago, that the season ended with a 500-mile race.
Yeah.
Like they did the 3 abreast start, everything. Like it was.
Remember, not long ago we had 3 500-mile races with a 3 wide start.
Yeah, and a sponsor that was going to pay if you won them all.
Yeah.
Amazing how quickly things change. Honestly, it's and definitely disappointing for sure.
We thought we had it so like we didn't think we had it that great back then either.
Yeah. No. Well, that's what's interesting with perspective is that, you don't think it could get worse, and then it does. And then you go, wait a second. Wait, go back. Go back. Before we get in too deep to the IndyCar stuff, let's talk a little bit of F1 because also their season starts, and I will make a quick complaint here. This isn't the Kyle gets David in trouble segment yet, but why was St. Pete not last week like it was last year? Why would you compete against Formula One season opener? I mean, I understand like you can't avoid NASCAR. But like, why wouldn't you do the week after the Daytona 500 again, and the week before F1? I really don't understand the scheduling this year. I'm sure there's some like town thing with St. Pete. That would be my guess of why it's not the previous week like it was last week. But I thought it was so nice last year when we showed up in February, the week after the Daytona 500, and kicked the IndyCar season off. It's going to be tough to compete, I think, this weekend against Formula One for IndyCar. That's going to be an interesting comparison, by the way, to see what IndyCar's rating is on NBC in, I guess we can't really call it prime time, but it's going to be a good TV window when everybody's awake. And Formula One in Bahrain, I don't even know when that's going to start. It's going to probably be at some ridiculous hour. Be interesting to see how close the TV ratings are.
10 a.m.
Both openers. Okay, that's not. Oh boy. Oh. Well, what it will be, I will say this, and I don't want to get too much into scheduling, but it'll be a great. If you're a race fan, Sunday is going to be awesome. You can essentially watch whatever it's going to be, probably 8 hours of content between F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR, and essentially it's probably all going to essentially line up.
Yeah, because Cup's still on the West Coast, aren't they?
So yeah, they're doing Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's probably like a 5 p.m. slot. So you pretty much get a perfect window of F1, IndyCar, and then Cup.
Yeah. So it'll be a good day to be a fan. But I'm very interested and curious to see how the TV numbers eventually shake out. But Kyle, F1. I feel like you had a topic to discuss here, so hit me with it.
Yes. You didn't watch it, but I watched. I'm on like episode 3, 4 now. But Drive to Survive season 5 hit last week, right before preseason testing. Perfect timing on their part, honestly.
And they streamed preseason testing.
Yeah, they did. Did you watch any of it? Do you have F1 TV?
No, I need to buy F1 TV. Yeah, I didn't even know they were streaming it. They kept it pretty low key that they were doing it, which I was a bit surprised about. Yeah, I just saw a screenshot and I was like, wait a second, they're streaming this? I thought they didn't stream it last year, so I didn't know. Yeah, I would have. I should have bought it.
It's an F1 TV thing. It's just like you get preseason testing with F1 TV, and then you get F2 and F3. So it's like, again, talking about how freaking great F1 TV is. You get all the feeder series, you get preseason testing on top of the turning the commentary off and all the feeds and all the cool stuff. So once again, for probably like the third podcast in a row, F1 TV is great, and NASCAR and IndyCar need to like just start working on it, guys. Start getting that together. You need to do it.
You know what's crazy? I discovered the other day that NHRA streams a channel 24/7. Did you know that?
No.
For free. If you have, I think it's the Tubi app on your, a lot of people have smart TVs now. If you just search NHRA, they have a TV channel running 24/7 of NHRA content. It's original stuff that they've made, classic races. It's all really pretty high quality stuff. And I didn't know this existed until about 5 days ago. And I was just like, wow, amazing.
Wow. Anyways, Drive Survive started, and it's always a debate every year on whether or not it's good. The last 2 years, it's gotten a lot of criticism to the point where in season 4, Max Verstappen just declined to be in it. Well, Max Verstappen was in it this year, and I wanted to bring it up because I feel like David's not going to have anything to say, but the chat might. But I think it was pretty good so far from what I've seen. They have a lot of issues in like jumbling around races. Like in episode 1, they go through Bahrain, and you see who wins Bahrain. It's race 1 of the season. That's how the episode ends. And they kind of focus on everybody in episode 1 a little bit. Episode 2 was focusing on Mercedes. And guess where the episode starts? It starts in preseason testing. And why are it's testing when the first episode was about Bahrain, the first race of the season? So like there's jumbling in it that's weird. They don't talk about Brazil 2022 at all. They talk about they go through the Silverstone race twice. I've seen 2 episodes now where they cover the Zhou Guanyu crash, full detail. Like
How long do they make it? Do they go full Ricky Bobby like they did with
they do the thing where he flips over, it goes silent. They show the people in the garage. Will Buxton comes out.
They show an Applebee's commercial
over a racetrack. Like
do they show an Applebee's commercial? That would be my question.
That's the meme I need to see right now, because that's how it feels, the way they go through those things. Like you go to like 3 different interviews talking about the crash, and then it takes them 5 to 10 minutes to tell you that the driver was okay. When anybody who's seen it already, which most people have that are watching Drive Survive, maybe most people haven't, but it way over dramatized, and they showed it twice.
It was. I mean, it was a cool crash. I mean, you have to admit. I mean,
twice
in spectacular
2 separate episodes, and but I do think it was better this year. It wasn't as bad as last year. Like last year, they legitimately tried to make it seem like Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris hated each other, which was not accurate. I think Lando Norris recently just put up a YouTube video like watching Drive to Survive, like getting his reactions, and he was like complaining about it. He was so
well, and that's kind of like, so I was one of the people that kind of found out about Drive to Survive pretty early, because this is kind of a narrative that people have spread, which isn't really, I think, right. I understand why the narrative exists now. A lot of people say like COVID made Drive to Survive. No, Drive to Survive was already like ramping up without the lockdowns. Like I remember standing on the pit lane at Indianapolis in 2019, and I was just talking with, I think, a photographer and maybe a PR person, and just the 3 of us just kind of brought up this F1 show that was on Netflix, and it was just kind of like, oh yeah, wow, a lot of people know this and are talking about this. I mean, yes, it was kind of contained at that time in racing, but I mean, I noticed it right away that people were talking about it, and they were talking about it so positively that I'm like, I got to check this out. I checked it out. I watched the Haas episode, like everybody said to, and I was not impressed. And it kind of ran me away, because what I went in expecting, I think I got sold something that I don't think Drive to Survive actually is. Because when I hear racing documentary, I'm thinking about like National Geographic at an F1 race. And that's not what Drive to Survive is. Drive to Survive is days of our lives at an F1 race. And when I watched it, I'm just like, what the hell is this? This isn't about racing. It's about drama.
It's
And
about
not like the good drama. It's fake crap. And I just didn't like it. And I haven't gone back and watched it since.
Drive to Survive is about how many times every driver and team principal says the F word. That is what Drive to Survive is about.
I mean, it's yeah, and that's fine. And honestly, like, do the Drive to Survive fans get annoying from time to time? Yes.
Yes.
But do I not want them there? No, I think it's great that the sport has expanded through Drive to Survive, and I think it's done a great thing for younger fans. I think it's given younger fans the ability to understand how to meme auto racing and actually get those memes out into like the general public, where, believe it or not, like, memes are a great way to market now. And if you have a good meme like a Gunther Steiner or anything to do with Max or Lewis, or Charles Leclerc at this point with his banana suit, like it resonates and it means something now. And it's believe it or not, it's gotten people to tune into Formula One in this country, which is something that we were told time and time again that Americans would never do. And they're doing it in higher numbers than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, one of the wildest things about Drive to Survive is right now, if you look on Netflix, I don't know if at the moment it's still like this, but when I tuned in, Drive to Survive, if you go on Netflix, the little like popular right now on Netflix, Drive to Survive is number 4 overall on everything on Netflix.
Wow.
Like as a whole. So like how many people do you think turn on Netflix every day? And you're going on there and the first thing you see is this F1 show at number 4. That's impressive. And that moves the needle for sure. That's amazing.
And if we're talking about casuals, ESPN pushes Formula One. Like they do. I mean, when I would watch Monday Night Football, they would do like their little like sizzle reel of all the things that ESPN's proud of. And like, there's F1, like loud, proud, and prominent right up at the front of all these ESPN promos in the middle of winter. Yep. Formula One's been gone for a month or whatever, and I'm sitting there watching the Colts get absolutely trounced on Monday Night Football, and I'm seeing Lewis Hamilton on my TV, and that, and I'm sure, and I believe it or not, I don't watch much ESPN anymore. I don't think a lot of people do, because quite frankly, I get bored of the same 5 people yelling at each other about draft picks for the 15th time this week. But I imagine if you turn on F1 right now and you watch an hour of television, you probably will get at least one ad telling you, hey, tune in to the Bahrain Grand Prix at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That would be my guess.
Yep. Last thing about F1, did you look at any of the times for testing? Is there anyone that stands out to you? What are kind of your Bahrain predictions?
Well, I think like a lot of people, I'm very curious about the Aston Martin this year. Yep. That car looks the business. Even just from like sitting still, you kind of go, wow, they really they really threw the kitchen sink at it. And this time they didn't blatantly copy anybody. So I think it will be fun. I think, as you know, Fernando Alonso is a very interesting and intriguing prospect, as he always is. Why he's still in F1, we might actually find out this year. And the fact that Lance Stroll fell off his bicycle may lead to a Sebastian Vettel comeback, which I don't think anybody saw coming. So that could be fun too. But I think I think we're going to see more of the same. I don't think we're going to see too much different. I think the surprise will be whoever's behind the Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But we'll see. I mean, I kind of expected last year we'd see a Braun GP situation of some sort, and we really didn't. It was all really the same 3 teams at the front of the field that we've seen before. I would be surprised if in the second year of the regulations, someone's going to come out of left field and have a killer car. But I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
I think my first thought was the same as yours. I'm very curious about the Aston Martin. just given, I think I saw a stat on Twitter where it was like the Aston Martin and Carlos Sainz and the Ferrari both did race simulation runs, like a 57 lap run, and Fernando Alonso ran quicker on a full race 57 lap run than the Ferrari. So that doesn't really mean anything because Ferrari was testing like low downforce at the preseason test. So I'm pretty sure. So I mean, we'll have to see, but it is just curious. And of course, it's Fernando Alonso, so anything can happen. I would really hope for them to be a contender and give us 4 teams in contention to possibly win races. The other thing that I'm very curious about this year is we're probably not going to see it until a couple races in, like we did last year. But obviously, with Ferrari having a new team principal, um, maybe some of the strategy issues that we saw last year might resolve themselves. That's another thing from watching Drive to Survive that I really realized, and that's like the one thing that they did like a really good job at this season was showing how terrible Ferrari was at strategy last year. Like, oh my gosh, because the way they dissected it was perfect, and just the mistakes they made were just so silly and so blatant. It just we're probably gonna have to wait and see a couple races because that's typically when Ferraris tends to fall not in the first race but throughout the season. But yeah, with a new team principal, it's going to be interesting to see if they can fix these issues and actually give us a tighter fight. But Red Bull is always they're the leading contender. They usually if they have the fastest car, then if they don't have the fastest car, they usually have the best strategy, and they don't really mess up too often on pit lane. So yeah, it should be I think it's gonna be fun.
I think the general consensus last year was, at least for the first half of the year, Ferrari had the best car. And had
Yeah.
they had the strategy to match it or even at least keep up with it, we might have been talking a very different championship towards the end of the season. So it will be interesting to see what's going on with Formula One. But there are some things going on with IndyCar as well. Rule changes? What? In a spec series? Yeah. We actually, you know what? Here's the thing, Kyle. You know what's interesting, and maybe just like my expectations are now so low. When all these rule changes kind of got dumped on us about a week ago, I was actually like, it perked me up, like in a way that I haven't been perked up in a while, because like one of the things with like the past couple of years with IndyCar, and there's a lot of different reasons why it's been this way, but the cars themselves haven't really changed all that much. There hasn't been a lot of change to the racing product on track. When you go to a racetrack, you kind of expect what it's going to be like, because it's going to be similar to how it was last year. There have been some changes to the rules this year, at least at one track, that are really going to shake up things, and a couple of other rules changes that we may or may not see throughout the season come into play. The first one I want to talk about is something that you and I kind of had an inside track to know was coming a little bit early, was the fact that they've changed the red flag rules for qualifying, which is good because now the red flags are no longer going to count against the clock, which I don't know why they didn't change this earlier, seeing as they are on Peacock for every single qualifying, and there is no such thing as like a TV window that they have to fit into anymore. But I think this is going to make qualifying. It's definitely going to make the grids more or less unpredictable, because we saw a couple of times last year where guys got into the fast 12 and fast 6 that maybe weren't really there on pace, but they did because of timely red flags. That was fun, but from like a competition perspective, I think this is a little bit better. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it no more getting mad at qualifying is how I think of it. There were so many times where it was just a red flag would come out and it would just totally botch the starting field. And yeah, now we don't even have to worry about that. And a lot of drivers, they don't have to worry about it anymore either. They don't, you know, qualifying. If you qualified poorly and you had a top 5 car, now you don't have that excuse of, well, we got screwed in qualifying. So I think it gives everybody a fair shake, and Yeah, it's the right thing to do, and I can't believe it didn't happen like 3 years ago. But yeah,
Well, better late than never. I think it's going to be it's a positive change, and I'm curious about the first time we're going to see it. I mean, St. Pete qualifying is usually an absolute demolition derby. I think there
yeah.
were like 3 cars that crashed in it last year. So I imagine we're probably going to get it right out the gate at St. Pete. See that rule change in action.
I
The
still
next rule.
think
Oh,
I still think we could argue about this.
oh,
I still think qualifying in IndyCar is just the format as a whole is weird. Like I still don't know if I agree with the way the splitting of the groups goes and then the way they sort them,
yeah,
because it would make a lot more sense to me. I mean, obviously we already get a bunch of arguing about blocking and qualifying and people getting each other's way, but the way they sort them, like I could qualify with a time fast enough for 12th, and because I'm like 8th or ninth in my group, I'm qualified like 18th. I think that's weird. I think that sucks.
yeah.
Now, if you were to just send all of them out there and then split it in half to 12 for the second round, then guess what? It's fair, because if you qualify with the 12th fastest time, then you or the 13th fastest time, guess what? You qualify 13th instead of like 18th if you were in a group. Plus the groups, a lot of times they get sorted by practice, right? The groups, or
I think
pre-sorted.
they do. I think they take odds and evens from practice, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
I
so
think
like
that's how they do it.
sometimes in qualifying you'll get one group where it's like every Penske car and then like 3 Ganassi cars and then like one small team, and it's like, well, how's that
Yeah,
fair?
you kind of know who the Fast Six is going to be,
And then the
and
second group is like all small teams, and it's like, well, once you get to 12, it's like, well, what?
yeah, that's kind of been the weird thing with the groups, and what's funny about it sometimes is like you go into those group qualifying sessions where you like, let's say for example, like you say, there's 3 Penske's and 3 Ganassis in there, and like Scott Dixon like has a spin or something, or Joseph's just slow, and you just miss a couple of guys like start like 18th or 22nd who definitely should not be starting back there, but they do because of how the groups shake out. It's a positive and negative. I'm not like hard line. I don't like it. The one change I would make to qualifying is I would do for the Fast Six. I would do single car
Yep.
qualifying.
That was what I was gonna say as well, is it needs
Yep.
to happen. Like
Yeah.
like the top 10 shootout in supercars. Like that,
Yeah.
go watch a top 10 shootout and watch when somebody puts down like a track record, and just tell me that the energy going on in that situation is not freaking incredible
Yeah.
versus
And
what we have now.
it's better for the sponsors. You get them a whole
Yeah.
lap where they got. I mean, it's Peacock, so it's it's Peacock.
Yep.
Say no more. But like I think one of the great things um about Indianapolis is the fact that everybody gets TV time. Everybody. If you miss the show, you get TV time. In fact, you probably get more TV time than the guy that qualified 30th because you run so many times. I would like to see that, and then you don't have any complaints about blocking or red flags anymore because if you crash the car, well, it was your fault.
Yeah. I love the idea of qualifying single car one lap shootout, because it's just that scenario of all eyes on you, on one person. And if you're doing groups, sometimes the guy who gets their pole lap will get missed. You won't see it because the cameras are keeping an eye on someone else. But if it's just one person, all eyes on you, you get one lap. If you screw up, you're gonna see it, and it's only 6 cars, so how long could it take? And it's like you said, you're on Peacock, you don't really have a TV window, so I mean, I think it would be incredible.
Well, and a lot of times, no one goes out till the very end anyway.
Yeah,
So you'd probably get more bang for your buck with guys just doing one run each versus everybody going out all at once, and then TV misses the actual pole lap because they're
you
showing the wrong car.
I would imagine too, if you filled up precisely for one lap, then the lap times would even get cut down as well a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
if you're
yeah, it'd be
harsher,
you probably break track records more often, just having single car runs on road courses for sure, and that'd be fun. That would be exciting. um, the next rule change is another interesting one because you and I were standing in the pit lane at Indianapolis after the GP, the soggy GP, and we tried to talk to a lot of different drivers. Only one of them talked to us, Connor Daly. Shout out to him. And he told us at the time, "Whoa, boy, we got trouble. We're in big trouble. We can't see." And I was like, "What?" Because I had no idea. And as we tried to talk to more drivers, I've never seen more like deer in the headlights looks from IndyCar drivers in my life after the Indy rain race. I mean, those guys were spooked because they couldn't see out of the aero screen. And they have made a change this year. They've added a couple of wickers to the front shock cover. And the idea is it's going to wick that spray away from the aero screen to get less water on top of it and hopefully increase visibility.
They've also made the rain lights bigger too, as well.
Yes, yes, because they've changed the rear attenuator. They've made it a little bit longer, and like you said, they made the light bigger and brighter, which good change. Should help with rear impacts as well as being able to hopefully see in the rain. The question that I have, and I think a lot of people have, looking at those rain wickers, is when are they going to put them? Because they're going to make them mandatory. They said they're mandatory parts, but they didn't specify when they're going to be mandatory. They did not test with them at thermal, so it would say to me that it's going to be mandatory when it's raining. But does that mean a threat of rain? Does that mean cars will start the race without them and then gain them throughout the race if it starts to rain? That's the question that I have, and I have yet to see a clarification on that particular rule. I mean, what are your thoughts on the new rain rules, Kyle?
Yeah, I hope they work. And like you said, we just need a clarification now on, what we hope they don't do is call a yellow and bring them in to put on these things when it starts raining. What we'd like them to do is say, hey, it's a pretty good chance of rain. We're putting these things on. It would be interesting to me because these pieces on the front that they put on for the rain are pretty big. So in the dry, what aerodynamic advantages or maybe disadvantages would they have as well? If it's forecasted for rain, we put them on, doesn't rain, what do these things do downforce wise?
I'm gonna make a guess here that it will be those rain wickers are going to be like the air scoop on the top of the aero screen for cooling. They'll probably, my guess would be they'll just make a call before the race starts and say, okay, you got to run them or you don't got to run them. It's not going to be, there's not going to be an in between. The worry I would have, that I will say this, Kyle, they will not put it in a position where they put the teams in a position where they can experiment with them or want to run those in the wind tunnel to see if they make the car any faster or make more downforce. That's not IndyCar's MO right now. They do not want, I don't think they want teams messing with aero stuff.
Just wondering if it's something like what it does, if they run them in the dry, is it going to mess with the setup? Is it going to mess with passing, like dirty air? What's it going to do? That's my only question with it.
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's not, I'm sure there is an effect of some kind. I just, the only thing I hope that they don't do is I do fear a scenario where they don't start the race with those wickers on the car and it rains and they yellow flag the race so that everybody has to go in and change the shock cover. That would be silly. I pray to God that does not happen, because that's one of the, we were talking about this last week, I think, about NASCAR in the rain. It's the worst thing about a NASCAR rain race is they yellow flag the race so people can change to rain tires. It should be, in my opinion, rain equipment should be up to the team to it's a team's responsibility to get that stuff on the car, in my opinion.
That's one of the best parts about the GP last year was guys just flinging it out there on dries, just hoping it was better, just to throw something at it and dry some.
Yeah.
So they threw a yellow and everybody had a free opportunity to change to the wets, then that ruins part of the fun of a rain race.
Well, we were sitting there and Pato last year at the rain race, we thought he was either going to look like a genius or look foolish when he stayed on the dries, because it was like, because it was so iffy with that rain. It was like it's either going to bucket down or it's just going to go away. So you're right. I mean, that was a very exciting part of that race, was the strategy and some of the guys screwing up those strategies. Cars and drivers that probably should have been at the front of that thing were not, because they screwed the strategy up. And I think, and I think that's a big thing as we kind of continue down the rules package talk, is that the more options you can present to the teams to make the cars different, I think that will improve the racing, because you don't want everybody to have the exact same setup, because the changes or the differences between each car, especially on the oval tracks, is going to be so minute that you're really not going to promote a whole lot of passing. If everybody's welded together the entire time, that's not going to be very exciting. And so it kind of goes to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is that they are increasing downforce not only at all the oval tracks, but at Indianapolis in particular. I believe I saw a number. They're increasing the downforce by 10% over last year. That's pretty. That's a lot that the teams now have, and it is an optional change. They've actually changed the stalks of the rear wing to allow teams to crank more rear wing into the car than they've previously been able to. Indianapolis has been one of the things that has been brought up quite a bit, both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes, as a race that I think everybody would like to see improve from a show perspective. And let's not get it twisted. It has been a fun race to watch the last couple of years, but it's been obvious that it's tough to pass when you're not running first or second. We've known that for a couple of years. A 10% increase in downforce will probably help. My question is going to be, and my question always is, with the spec nature of IndyCar right now, what seems to happen more often than not, though it didn't happen last year with the Wickers. Ganassi, I think, ran without Wickers the entire race, and the rest of the field did. But oftentimes a downforce combination is hit upon by someone and everybody copies it. And then nothing really has changed, and the field still runs the same way they always do. Do we think increasing downforce is going to, I don't want to say fix the Indy 500, but is it going to make it a more competitive show for 200 laps?
Well, what we've learned in the last few years is that it doesn't really matter. What matters the most is the weather. Because if it's hot, a 10% increase in downforce might help a little bit, but it's not gonna help the racing as much as, when we have weather like 2021, where it was damn near perfect and the cars were able to pass, they were able to race each other. And I mean, it might help, but like you said, everybody just copies each other in whatever aero configuration they have. I remember when they added the extra flaps on the front wing at Pocono, and
everybody ran it.
guess what? Nothing changed. I mean, it was the Pocono from the year before, just with added things on the front wing to make it easier to drive, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing that I wonder. I guess the one thing, because here's I've said this a couple of times. First of all, not an aerodynamicist. I'm a YouTuber, okay? But one of the things that I think we're just gonna have to accept is that this particular chassis that they are running, no matter what body kit you put on it, no matter what you do to it, like, there's a specific way that it is going to race. And it's very difficult to change that without changing the chassis. We saw in the early DW12 era, in fact, the best racing with this particular car was when they were absolutely loaded up on downforce with the aero kits. So this particular DW12 chassis loves a lot of downforce. So if you increase the downforce, theoretically, it will make the racing better. But I think to have a real change and maybe go back to some racing where it's a little bit like it used to be, where it's more of like more of a set them up and pass them halfway down the straightaway rather than dive bomb them at the end of the straightaway sort of thing. You'd have to change the chassis because there's a lot of things. I think the underfloor is too big and too big of a part of the downforce. Maybe I would like to see them reduce the size of the floor. First of all, I'd like to see them increase horsepower. And I'd like to see them take away some body work to increase some drag. I think that would help the racing on the super speedways, in my opinion. But that's not going to be able to change until we get a new car, and God only knows when that's going to happen.
Yeah, give us like another 20 years till we get that.
Oh, God.
Just a big ray of sunshine today, David. 20 years, new chassis.
20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Delara's made a new chassis. Here's an interesting thing, though. We heard a lot of defense about the Gateway race last year, and there were times where the Gateway race was exciting last year. But let's be honest with ourselves. No matter how many on-track passes you promote, it did not pass the eye test for 80% of that race. It was locked together, line of cars. Nobody was passing anybody. There has been a change made, and it's a very exciting change. They are going to run for the first time in a while, not the first time ever, like some people have been reporting. They are going to have an alternate, softer compound tire at Gateway that teams will be required to use, but we have not seen this in a while. I'm excited, but there's some talking points. Kyle, I just want to hear your thoughts on Gateway changing for this year.
Yeah, like you said, we got some pushback on saying the race wasn't very good last year, and I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about that recently, even before this change, because that was weird. Because we were there in person, and it felt like the majority of people that told us that was a good race were watching it on TV, and we didn't see a whole lot. And my reasoning for like when it wasn't very good was I remember a specific moment when the leaders were trying to lap Ed Carpenter and they couldn't. It was a train of the leaders following the last place car, and they couldn't pass the last place car.
And the difference in lap time was like ridiculous. Like before they caught him, they were like half a second faster than him per lap.
Like the leader caught Ed Carpenter, couldn't pass him, and that just let second, third, fourth, all of them catch up, and then they just ran in a line around the track until Ed pitted. And it was strange because then it becomes the only thing that's exciting is that you pit in when you pit. And adding the tires could lead to moments when, someone's out there on the primaries and you're out there on fresh reds. Well, guess what? That extra grip could let you pass, actually. So it could even open up an extra lane or two, depending on the level of grip that the tires give you at Gateway. So it's a must-needed change. We heard rumblings about it last year, which was the fun part.
Well, I can tell you a story about that. And I feel like the statute of limitations has kind of passed on this. So at the Iowa race weekend, I arrived and I heard it from someone like early in the week. They said, "Hey, did you hear they're running alternate tires at Gateway? They're going to run alternate tires at Gateway." I'm like, I'm like, that's crap. No, I'm like, that's not true. And I ran into another person who's high up in a team, and I kind of just floated. I said, "Guess what BS I heard?" And this person said, "Oh yeah, no, that's a thing." I'm like, "What?" And this person I believe. So on the grid at the Iowa race, I walked up to one of the PR people with Firestone, and I said, "Hey, heard this crazy rumor. I don't think it's true, but I'm going to ask you about it anyway." I said, "Alternate tires at Gateway?" And that person, the jaw hit the floor, like deer in the headlights, like, and she was like, I can't talk about that. I'm like, "Okay, see you later." And that was when I knew it was true. Why they didn't, because they had tested it. So that was kind of the story, was they had gone there like in secret and tested with somebody. I don't remember what team did it. It might have been Arrow McLaren, but I don't know for sure. And they went there and tested the alternate tires at Gateway. Now, why they didn't use it last year, I don't know. But I'm pleased to see that they've made this change. I have a couple of questions. The first thing I see is a positive, and I think the biggest impact. There's two things that are going to be impactful in a positive way that the alternate tires will make. The first one is you're going to have the strategy, which is going to create comers and goers. One of those tires is going to be better than the other ones. Now, whether it's the black tires or whether it's the red tires that are the preferred tire, doesn't matter. It means that some of the field is going to be on one tire that's preferred, and the other side of the aisle is going to be on a tire that's not so good. That means hopefully you'll have enough of a difference in lap time that you'll get some passing. The second way these alternate tires could create some passing is that if the alternate red tires are grippy enough to overcome dirty air to a certain extent, if you can get a better run off the corner on red tires in dirty air behind a car on black tires, I think that is another way that you're going to promote passing. Now, on the other side of things, the one negative that I can see from this, marbles are already a problem at Gateway with one tire compound out there. With two different tire compounds, we've seen it on the road and street courses, particularly on the street courses, tires get eaten up, especially when you've got softer and softer compounds running. So my question is going to be, how soft is Firestone going to make this tire? Because to help promote better racing, you might see them really go aggressively on it and do a really soft tire. That tire is going to wear more. It's going to create more rubber on the racetrack. That's going to narrow the groove. So what you're going to have to hope for is that if that groove narrows with a lot of marbles, that the tires are going to be grippy enough or different enough where you can get a run coming off of the corner, pass down the straightaway, and get back in line before you get to those marbles in 3 and 4. That's how I see it.
Yep. The other thing is going to be, do you think if this works, we were just talking about, is this another way that you could promote better racing at the 500? Having a red and a primary.
Yes. Actually, what's interesting is that one of the greatest Indy 500s ever, in my opinion, is 1989. A lot of people point to that one. That's how you can tell an uneducated person. They point to 1989 and say, that was a terrible race because Mo won by 2 laps. No. If you've watched the 1989 race, you would know that it was really a 3-way duel between Michael Andretti, Al Unser Jr., and Emerson Fittipaldi. Michael blew an engine. He was out of it. But the reason Al Unser Jr. had an opportunity to not only pass Emerson Fittipaldi, but lead the race with 2 laps to go, and then eventually in traffic make contact with Mo and went into the wall. Mo went on to win. But the reason Al Jr. was able to come up there and challenge Emerson, who had been the dominant car of the day, was the fact that Goodyear brought 2 different compounds to the race that year. In fact, they did that throughout the 80s and 90s a lot of times. I think it was when they switched over to the radial tires from the bias ply tires that they'd been running before. Goodyear brought 2 compounds. There was a harder tire and an option softer compound. A lot of teams could not run the option tire because they were blistering them. It was hot outside, and some cars were just too hard on the tires for them to run. Well, the Gallus team figured out how to get Al Unser Jr. to run fast on the softer alternate tire, and he made up a ton of time on Emerson Fittipaldi, even to the point where he took the lead and looked like he was going to be able to win the race. But that duel was set up specifically because there were 2 different tire compounds. So to your point, Kyle, I hope that this Gateway experiment works, and I would love to see alternate tire compounds on the oval tracks. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was actually something that was brought up in that survey from a couple of years ago. That was one of the questions. Would you like to see alternate tire compounds on the ovals? And I remember answering an emphatic yes to that.
Okay. I agree. I agree. That's about it.
Well, and what's interesting too, and GP Laps brings up a great point, is that when Goodyear and Firestone were running, both of those tire companies, so you had two tire companies competing, and both of them brought alternate compounds. So you had potentially, four different combinations of tire strategy out on the track at one time, and that was, you want to talk about crazy. I mean, you wonder how the races were good back then. That's how, because the cars were different, the strategy was different, even the tires were different really throughout the entire field, if you think about it. So there probably wasn't one car that was on the grid in 1995 that had the same chassis, engine, and tire combination, or aerodynamic combination for that matter. I mean, just it was all different. And so hopefully that's something we can kind of get back towards, start inching back towards in some ways, because I think that's the missing spice right now in IndyCar, in my opinion, is just the different options available to teams. And the more options we give the teams, I think the better the racing product and more compelling the racing product will be.
Now, like a lot of the the pressure needs to be on Firestone's shoulders here, because the tire, like the tires, too often in a race in IndyCar, the tires will be the same. Like there will not be enough difference between the blacks and the reds. Now, for this to work, they need to be different.
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see a scenario where the tires are too similar that it doesn't really make a difference, and then people lose sight of that fact that it's Firestone's fault that they aren't different, and that's why it didn't work. For it to work, they have to be different.
There is definitely a scenario, because I think there is a scenario where Firestone is too conservative on it, because I think they will, to a certain extent. Like, they're not going to bring a gumball tire. I'll just say that right now. They will not bring a tire that goes off in 2 laps if they can avoid it. Now, they might accidentally do that, but they're not intentionally going to bring a tire that's like the purple Pirelli from a couple of years ago in Formula One, right? They're going to be conservative on it, because one of the things that I think Firestone prides itself on, rightly so, is the fact that they very, very rarely have a tire failure. Very rarely. And
it's almost never their fault. It's usually a puncture of some sort.
100%. So what Firestone is going to want to get out of the Gateway race is to not have a PR disaster. From their perspective, they want to do this safely. But I think they're capable of doing it. Like, they've done it before. And if you think back to CART, when they were competing with Goodyear, there weren't that many tire failures, even on the Goodyear side of things. So, I think people look at NASCAR in 1994 and kind of overblow the tire war thing a lot. Oops, that I probably shouldn't have said it quite that way. But I think there's a couple of bad examples of that. There was Michelin not being able to build a tire for the diamond grinding at IMS. Goodyear had that same trouble when they were the spec tire supplier of NASCAR. But on the whole, I think they'll be able to handle this. I think, like you say, I think the big question is going to be whether they have enough of a delta between those two tires to make it actually an impactful change. All right. Let's talk about St. Pete, shall we? And I guess we'll talk a little bit about IndyCar in general as we head in to the 2023 season. Good Lord, 2023. That's a big number. Kyle, what are some storylines you're looking at going into this IndyCar season?
Well, there's a lot of storylines that are the same as always, like the Joseph Newgarden, the Scott Dixon. They're going to be championship contenders for sure, obviously. The teams I look at, right now, I think a lot about Juncos and the season they're going to have, how they step it up, and really their second full-time season and adding a second car. I just learned that I don't want to absolutely destroy his name, but Augustin Canapino. I think I at least got his last name right.
Augustine. Not Augustin.
I'm too Midwestern to But I recently just learned that he just like a month or two ago, the only English he knew was hello.
Yeah.
So going into that's going to be interesting. I can't wait to meet him, and because he apparently he's been taking very uh, uh what's the word, like aggressive English classes.
Crash course in English. He's cramming,
I
cramming
already
for the
saw
test.
I saw some of the content day stuff where someone asked him who like his best friend was or someone on the train. He said Ray Hall. And they're like, have you ever met him? And he's like, no.
What?
So I'm very interested.
I'm
I want
looking
to see.
forward to meeting Augustine.
I watched the Yunkos just uploaded a YouTube video following Callum and I guess Augustine.
Augustine, there you go.
Augustine, he's gonna become my new favorite driver.
You're not allowed to have favorites. Boo.
Boo. But I just watched their YouTube video, and the commitment that he has is incredible. I'm very curious to see how he does and progresses through the season, because he doesn't come from open wheels. He does not like have a background, I don't think.
Well, Jose Fraga Acosta says something very important to note, and I think he's probably from Argentina, I would guess, because Augustine is the Scott McLaughlin from Argentina. He came from touring cars, so same background as Scott McLaughlin, but obviously Argentinian touring cars, a lot less fan interaction than the supercars. I mean, I remember hearing about Scott McLaughlin when he went to Surfers one time and gave that Jandal quote. I think he passed, was it Mark Winterbottom, I believe. He like sent one on Mark Winterbottom and got out of the car and cussed on live TV, and it was great.
It was WinCup.
Was it WinCup? It was one of the Red Bull cars. We will be corrected shortly in the comments, I'm sure. But all I remember is he was driving the Volvo, and I remember just kind of sitting up and taking note, like, hey, that guy's pretty good. Didn't expect you to be an IndyCar driver for Team Penske, but so if Augustine is on that same level as Scott McLaughlin from a driving standpoint, I mean, and we've seen the pace from Callum. I mean, I think I mentioned that a couple podcasts ago. I mean, he was right up there in testing at thermal. So, I mean, we'll see how it translates at St. Pete, but he was on the front row last year at Laguna Seca. Maybe we'll see it at Barber when they finally get to a natural terrain road course. But I bet you Callum's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Callum Ilott predictions on Twitter. A lot of talk about Callum going into this year and hopeful expectations for him. So I've been thinking about him, that team, and Callum a lot lately, and paying attention to what they do. And then the Ray Hall team, because they were, let's be honest, they were bad last year. Yep. And specifically who I'm watching this year, Christian Lundgaard, because I think out of the three, he was the one who showed probably the most amount of pace. And now he's in the 45 car. I don't think that'll make any difference.
I think they're just changing the stickers.
But they're finally in their own shop. They finally have their new shop built. So this year, I think maybe we'll see Christian Lundgaard competing for wins.
Well, he was competing for wins last year.
Yeah.
And that's the thing to think about. He was second at the Indy GP. He damn near won Nashville. I think let's say Ray Hall takes even like a baby step up. I mean, that's all really Lundgaard needs before he starts winning races. That's all he needs. Because I mean, if they were that bad last year and he's running podiums at the end of the year, like, look out. I think that guy may really surprise some people.
Yep. I would like to see Jack Harvey also make a bounce back. Because
boy, he's that career-defining year for Jack Harvey, I would say.
For sure. And then just other things that stand out to me going into the year. I think there's a lot of eyes on Scott McLaughlin for sure, because you go from his first year, which was it's okay. Had a couple moments in 2021. Last year, looked like a championship contender. Cleans up a few races. Has a good Indy. Maybe he's a championship contender at the end of the year. And plus, Indy's not double points anymore. So if he did have I would like to look at the points last year where you take out Indy, where Scott McLaughlin would be, because he had a win right at the bat in the beginning of the season, smack dab in the middle at Mid-Ohio, and then at the end of the year in Portland. And then outside of that, he was running in the top 10 and competing for top fives and podiums.
He won Nashville too, didn't he? Or was he second there?
He was second.
Okay.
Scott Dixon won Nashville.
That's right.
You were there and I wasn't. How did?
Yeah, but I was also watching it on TV. So, but you know what? Here's something about St. Pete in particular. There's two trends that I notice at St. Pete every year. Number one, St. Pete almost always, has a driver kind of have a coming out party. Whether they win or whether they dominate the race, it's one of the two things. We saw Robert Wickens do it in 2018. We saw Felix Rosenquist do it in 2019. We've seen Colton Herta do it a couple of times. We saw Scott McLaughlin do it this year. There's almost always a driver that you're not expecting that runs up at the front, competes very strongly, and kind of sets the tone for the rest of the year. Speaking of setting the tone for the rest of the year, the other thing that I notice and observe at St. Pete is oftentimes St. Pete will cost at least one person the championship, because sometimes you look at Joseph Newgarden the last couple of years. I know we started the season at Barber 2 years ago, but Joseph has had a bad race at the first race of the season the last couple of years. Scott Dixon, a lot of times, will have a bad St. Pete and be on the back foot the entire season. Sometimes he'll overcome it, sometimes he won't. But we find oftentimes that if a driver has a bad St. Pete, whether or not they have a good rest of the season, oftentimes we're looking at St. Pete and saying, well, wait a second, if they had just finished in the top 10 at St. Pete, they would have won the championship. It's always interesting how it works that way.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's interesting you point out the coming out parties at St. Pete, because last year I made the mistake of having that same prediction where I think I thought when I did my predictions video, I think I said that like Grosjean was going to be on the pole or something. Like somebody knew like a rookie was going to win the pole and do the Rosenquist or the Wickens type run. And this year, who would you think it would be? Who do you think this year has their big weekend?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because it will go into another hot take I'm going to have about this season. I think it's going to be Marcus Armstrong for Chip Ganassi Racing. I think he's the guy who I would point to and say, that guy is going to surprise everybody, but it really probably shouldn't be a surprise. And I'll also say something else about Marcus Armstrong. In my opinion, despite the fact that he's not running the ovals this year, I think he will still win the Rookie of the Year championship.
That's a hot take. That's a big hot take.
Romain Grosjean almost did it 2 years ago. Yeah, so it is not impossible, and Romain didn't win a race. If Marcus Armstrong goes out there and wins one or two races, I mean, it's not even going to be close.
So what about Marcus Armstrong makes you have that take? What?
He's in a Ganassi car, first of all. The other rookies, let's see. We've got Augustine, who's a complete unknown. He could be Ayrton Senna for all we know. But he's in a Juncos Hollinger car. Now, they could have a good season, but we're not 100% sure. The other rookie is Benjamin Peterson. He's driving for Foyt. And again, that's a team. They may be strong at St. Pete. They have been the last couple of years, but they're not going to be a race-winning contender throughout the entire course of the season. Stingray Robb is another one that could be interesting for Dale Coyne Racing. We know that they have a capability of winning the odd race here or there, but I think on the whole, Armstrong has the best pedigree and he's with the best team. And let's just look at history. Ordinarily, you're not really very smart if you bet against a New Zealander in an IndyCar race.
All right, fair enough. So, is that your boldest prediction for this weekend or this season? What's your boldest take?
That's bold. I don't know if that's the boldest I could go. I'd have to think about it, because I don't know, because there's some interesting possibilities out there. I would probably, I mean, I don't know if it's bold to say, and I'm going to keep picking the Ganassi 11 car, Sato at the Indy 500. Like, I think that's a very intriguing possibility.
I just saw
Uh,
his betting odds are like plus 2,000. It's like,
oh dear,
dude,
are you
put money
serious?
on it right now.
Yeah. This is not financial advice, but yeah.
Plus 2,000 for Takuma Sato in a Ganassi car.
Those are very good odds. Very good
Uh,
odds. Very good odds. Uh Interesting. I think you know who's another one that's going to sneak up on people? Kyle Kirkwood.
yeah.
Quick in testing, and especially at St. Pete. If it's not Armstrong, I think Kyle Kirkwood's going to be the guy who just suddenly shows up and shows out, and everybody's going to go, "Oh, where was this?" Well, he got a hot rod. I think he's got a hot rod this year. I'm very interested to see how the Andretti Autosport team dynamic changes or maybe doesn't change this year. Because as we know, it was very dysfunctional last year. Now, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Rossi was unhappy and he and Grosjean didn't really get along all that much. But let's say Kyle Kirkwood goes in there and really starts winning a lot and challenging Colton Herta and challenging Romain Grosjean. I wonder how the team dynamic is going to evolve over the course of the year if the Andretti guys start hammering on each other.
Yeah, it's interesting you say you bring up Kirkwood because that makes me wonder who do you think? So the three guys that had kind of iffy 2022s that I'm curious to see how they do this year is Kirkwood, Grosjean, and Rossi, and two of them have moved, Rossi and Kirkwood. So out of those three, who do you think is going to have the most impressive season?
Kirkwood, because the expectations aren't there. Um, and I think his expectations and his confidence is going to be much higher in an Andretti car. I think there's still a chance that Rossi will get shaken at McLaren, especially considering the competition that he has there. A lot of strong drivers, and we know Rossi operates best when he's number one. Now, if Rossi comes out there at St. Pete and just blows everybody's doors off, we may be having a different conversation. But I think from an expectation standpoint, I think of those three, it's Kirkwood that's going to have the overall best season. Romain Grosjean's also an interesting one because it looked like he was going to blow everybody away at St. Pete last year, and then he ran into the back of Takuma Sato, and it was all downhill from there. So I don't know. That's an interesting one. I would definitely say expectations are probably low for Grosjean too, but I'd say they're lowest for Kirkwood, and I think he's got the highest ceiling.
I feel like we've seen it before. Grosjean was an interesting one last year because when you compare his two IndyCar seasons, it's almost like he ran better with the coin car. Like
Oh,
it,
he definitely did. He definitely did.
it
100%.
I feel like we've seen that before. Is there anybody else? I can't think of it. That I feel like that's happened
Santino.
before. Yeah,
Santino.
yeah.
Who
Santino moves to a big
he's
team.
another one interesting that I'm interested to watch this year.
Michael
Um,
Cannon
with
with
Michael Cannon.
Santino. That's
That was
interesting.
exactly the combination at Foyt that was good, or at Coin that was good. So I'm curious to see. I mean, they were, and again, Foyt has been strong at St. Pete. I mean, they got a fourth place with Bourdais just a couple of years ago. Both of their cars were in the Fast 12 last year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they're pretty much they're close. They're a lot closer at St. Pete than they are at other tracks. We're not doing super chat yet, but I did see GP Lap said one that's relevant to this particular discussion. Who's going to have a bad season?
Mm. I don't want to wish any bad luck
Oh,
on
you're not
anybody, but we
wishing,
got
but
to do it, I guess.
somebody's going to have a bad season. Who's going to have a bad
Oh,
season?
oh. Uh, I think it's got to be. It almost has to be Grosjean, right?
Ooh, you
I,
don't think he had a bad year last year?
well, I think he did. I don't think it. I don't know how it could. What's changed that could make it better?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're
I
not
can't.
wrong.
And plus, like, I think there's expectations still with Grosjean. It would be easy for me to pick, like, to say Stingray Robb is gonna have a bad year because he's a rookie. Like he's not gonna. I mean, I think he's gonna do well and he's gonna get probably some top tens and have some showings that show he's good. But as a rookie in his first year, I don't expect him. I don't think he's going to have that many great runs. There's going to be a number of races, if I had to guess, where he's going to finish outside the top 20 or outside the top 15. So to say he's going to have a bad year, I mean, that's the expectation's not there for him to have a good year. So I don't know.
I don't know if he's going to have a bad year, but I'm going to be very curious to see Alex Palou this year. Because last year, yes, he was dominant at Laguna Seca, but they did put an engine in there specifically for that race. When you have a 500-mile limit or whatever it is, and you only have to go 200, you can run the wick a little bit higher than other races. And obviously, we know Alex is capable. I don't think he's going to have a bad year because the talent's not there. I just wonder, in a lame duck year with Chip Ganassi Racing, when everybody and their brother knows he's going to McLaren next year, how much support is he going to have over the other three drivers at his team? And this year you don't have Jimmy. So the bar is significantly higher at Ganassi to perform. So if you are a guy who is going to leave, everybody knows you are going to leave, are you going to get the kind of support, the kind of data that Scott Dixon, Marcus Ericsson, Marcus Armstrong, and Takuma Sato are going to get? I would say probably not. So I think the expectations would be rightfully high because he's a talent. He's a champion of the series, Alex Palou. But the situation that he's in is not an enviable one, in my opinion. I think we're going to see some of the ghosts come out of the closet, so to speak, from last year and how everything went down at Ganassi.
It's funny you mentioned Chip Ganassi. The one driver that I want to talk about, and I guess I'll bring up another one because we have to mention the two Swedish drivers I'm interested in seeing how they do this year is Ericsson and Rosenqvist, because Ericsson last year, after winning the 500, looked like he was pretty, and even after, especially after Iowa, when Newgarden crashed and he got kind of that buffer back, it looks like Ericsson was in a good spot to win the championship, but just didn't capitalize. He didn't have bad runs. He just didn't. I think he probably needed to win again, probably needed another podium or two. Is he going to be able to become the guy that wins more races and finishes on the podium more instead of being what he has been for the last 2 years in just a top 5 monster, top 10 guy that never wrecks? Like, he needs to step up and become the guy that wins, finishes on the podium, and then he could honestly be a championship contender. And then I think about Felix Rosenqvist as well, because like you say, everybody and their brother knows that Alex Palou is going to McLaren. So this is a make or break year for Rosenqvist. If we thought it was last year, well, this year it is, seems like for sure. He was knocking on the door a lot last year, and I hope, and I would like to see him take it up a step and win some races and be more competitive than he already was last year.
So a couple of thoughts on that. Marcus Ericsson, I think, is pretty much there in terms of a championship contender. I mean, he was mathematically eligible last year. You're right; he needs to win a little bit more, but like we can't take away the fact that he won the Indy 500. Like Marcus Ericsson has not won a race that has not been memorable yet.
Yeah. Not to take anything away, but he's just, if you look at his stats and you just I was paying attention to it throughout the season last year. It's like the guy can finish top 5 all year if he wanted to. If he can't, like he will. He will be in the top 5. He'll be in the top 10. Rarely, if ever, is he outside the top 10. But he's never been that guy who's in the top 3 fighting for the wins most of the time. When normally in that scenario, it's Joseph Newgarden, Dixon, Palou. Ericsson's never really in that conversation. And to be a true title contender like we saw last year, like Will Power and Newgarden, how did they catch Ericsson? They won races and they finished on the podium. Ericsson didn't, because the crazy part is Ericsson did not really screw up last year to lose the championship. He just finished top 5 instead of on the podium to win. because that's how competitive IndyCar is, believe it or not, that finishing top 5 in every race is not going to win the championship, because Will Power and Joseph Newgarden, they're just going to keep winning races and they're going to beat you.
I made one big mistake last year in my IndyCar commentary, and that was I underestimated Marcus Ericsson, especially at the Indy 500. Kyle, do you know what you're doing right now? You're underestimating Marcus Ericsson.
I want to see him do it. I'm not hating on the guy. I have nothing against him. I'm not saying Marcus Ericsson sucks and needs to step. No,
but you're great. Underestimating him. That's the thing.
Great.
You said exactly what I said last year, which is like, well, he'll be top 3, but if it ever comes down to him racing Joseph or Scott for the 500, I just don't see how he can win.
I'm not saying
you have just spoken into existence a Marcus Ericsson championship.
I'm not saying
he's going to win 10 races and the championship. You're going to stink up the season, and it's your fault.
The difference between what you said and what I'm saying, you said, oh, yeah, he's going to be up there in the top 5. I'm saying what he needs to do. I'm not saying what's going to happen. I'm saying what he needs to do.
I also said I would jump off the back of the grandstand if he won the race. So I think I'm going to have to do that at some point. But Felix. Now, Felix is a very interesting thought process because Felix has the same... Fief. Yeah, Fief. We love Fief.
We need to get that name out there.
Big Fief fan. Fief, he has the same... They've changed the number on the car. It's the same team as it was last year. Felix is in much the same boat as Christian Lundgaard was or is going into the season, where he was knocking on the door the whole second half of the season. Essentially, from Indy 500 on, Felix Rosenqvist probably could have won 2 or 3 races if the cards had fallen the right way. In fact, I thought he was going to win Mid-Ohio if he hadn't had that engine failure. He probably would have run away with Mid-Ohio if he hadn't blown the engine up. Or, well, if the engine hadn't blown up. I don't think it was his fault. But the other interesting stat about Fief is that Felix Rosenqvist is the only driver to finish in the top 10 in points last year that did not win a race. So that tells you that he was consistent. He was consistently at the front. He just needs that extra step, and he's going to be right there with the front runners in this series. And like you said, like a few people in the chat have said, this year he doesn't have the distraction of silly season. He knows what his situation is to a certain extent. And I think that Felix, the best way to ensure that he has a job next year is to win a lot of damn races. And I think he's capable of doing it.
Crazy prediction. I don't think it's... I think Felix... Do you think he's fighting for a job? Or do you think... Do you think he's fighting for a job with McLaren again? Or do you think this is it? He's going to have to find a new car next year?
Well, I could see a scenario... Because there's two things. There's two things. There's 2 dominoes that would fall potentially. Number one would be, how impressive is Alex Palou as a test driver for McLaren in Formula One? Then the second question would be, will there be any Formula One opportunities opening up this silly season? Will Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris, will there be any scenario where those drivers have their contract broken, bought out, fired, whatever? Now, that's not likely, but if there's an opportunity for Alex Palou in Formula One, I think I would hazard a guess that Felix is probably safe at McLaren. If Alex Palou and his only option is to race for Aero McLaren in IndyCar, I would not be surprised, and I don't have any inside information on this outside of the fact that Graham said in an interview after Toronto that he would hire Fief if he could. I could see him being at Rahal.
That was going to be my crazy prediction, I was going to say. Yeah. Crazy, outlandish prediction at the beginning of 2023 about 2024. Take it to the shank. I was going to... When that happens, look back to this episode. We were a year ahead.
I don't think you're wrong, and I don't think it's really that crazy or that off base. Like, we know the team likes him. Things changed. I believe he had a girlfriend switch in the middle of the season, which changed his opinion on some things. I think Felix wants to stay in the U.S. and race here, and I think he will stay here. I think that's where he wants to be. Some people are bringing up Formula E. I don't think he wants to be there. No. That would be my opinion. based on talking with him last year on the record and just kind of seeing what he said in like press conferences, for example, like and the fact that he's driving in a McLaren IndyCar this year, like he could have gone to Formula E if he wanted to be there,
Yeah,
and he's not. So I don't know. I don't think Felix is going to be. I think Felix will be in an IndyCar in 2024. That would be my hot take. Now, whether it's McLaren, who knows? It depends how many drivers they sign in the course of the offseason. Hey, speaking of, Kyle, it's time for you to get me in trouble.
David, after watching Drive to Survive Season 5 and looking over Twitter and hating my life, tell me, in your opinion, doesn't have to be F1, could be NASCAR, could be IndyCar. Which driver has the most toxic fan base right now?
Wow.
I told you I was going to get you in trouble this week.
Boy. Huh. That's an interesting question.
There's a few that come to mind.
I have to really think about that because you see what's funny is like as I've gotten older, the Twitter circles that are like drama circles, like you kind of age out of them. Like you're not really in them anymore. Yeah. You see them sometimes, but like they're not at the forefront.
I mentioned this as well because I remember, I think it was last week you mentioned that you used to hate Dale Jr. because of his fans.
Yeah.
So yeah. It is a thing where like fan bases of a driver can make you just irritated and not like a driver simply because of their fans.
I mean, I think, I think where you're going with this is that the Lewis versus Max fans are just the most insufferable. Like that, when those two fan bases start fighting, it is the worst. Like it is the worst thing ever. So I mean, I think they're both equally at fault for being the worst fan base. I know when Simon wrecked Lando Norris at the iRacing race a couple of years ago, the Lando Norris fans were pretty were pretty spicy. But it's tough. If you bring up Abu Dhabi 2021 still, and you're like,
day Team LH is all over it.
Yeah, well, but I think there are sore losers on the Lewis Hamilton side, but there are also sore winners on the Max Verstappen side. So I don't think anyone is innocent in that like war that goes on online on a daily basis. So it really just depends on the day between those two fan bases who's the worst. That would be my opinion.
You didn't see that's what's funny is modern day F1 has totally like stricken you from even mentioning like Chase Elliott fans or like Kyle Busch fans.
It's not even close. Like, NASCAR doesn't have that kind of NASCAR doesn't have that kind of juice anymore.
Okay, but like 10 years ago in the US, we wouldn't even think about F1 Twitter fans.
Oh, not at all.
Especially if we were here, we wouldn't even notice.
F1 in the US was like the chess club. Like that's what it was. Like everybody like in the US, if you liked F1, it was like a secret handshake. Like nobody hated anybody.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you watch F1? Oh, that's badass, dude. Like, what'd you think of the last Grand Prix? Like that's what it was like.
And now that's sports car racing.
Well, if they keep filling places up like they did Daytona, I hate to break it to you, we're quickly gonna lose our secret club. But I don't mind that so much. I mean, like the whole idea is like we're supposed to be trying to grow this sport, right? So like, I mean, the greater your population, the more chance or the higher percentage of people that are going to be complete jerk heads are going to be. So like, I mean, you have to take the good with the bad with F1. Like, yeah, it's not our secret club anymore, but there's more U.S. involvement, more U.S. interest than there ever has been in Formula One. So, like, okay, I guess. Well, I know what my answer would be. I mean, like, if you said, "Hey, David, do you want 2007 F1 back?" I would say yes in a heartbeat because I would get my speed channel back, and I would get my cars that look cool and V8 engines and all XYZ. I'd have a race in Indianapolis, which would be kind of neat. But like, if you look at it objectively, like F1 now is much healthier than it was in this country, 10 or 20 years ago. So I don't know. It's good that it's big and more people are able to make money in racing, which I think is good. Because I think that's a big thing holding racing back. Honestly, is there's a lot of people who either work for free or are underpaid for the work that they do, and I would like to see. That's one big thing that I think IndyCar especially would benefit from is more people being able to like take that step and become like a full-time IndyCar person or personality. F1's got that now in droves.
Well, you heard it here first. Twitter. David hates Team LH. He hates Charles Leclerc and he hates puppies. And you should definitely go after
Especially
him.
Roscoe. And I hate banana costumes.
Ooh, and especially the Lando Norris fans. He especially doesn't like the Lando Norris fans.
Well, I already pissed the Lando Norris fans off by saying it's a video game, bro, 100 times. Like, we already did that. I don't know. Okay. Well, that's fun. Well, we'll see if Twitter listens to this podcast. Super chats. We got all sorts of super chats tonight. We got some big ones too, which I need to shout out. Let's see. Why do I make the thumbnails look so close together? The first super chat comes from Napa Racing Fan 927, who says, "What track should replace Fontana in NASCAR in 2024?" Kyle?
Irwindale.
Isn't that also closed?
No,
I think they shut that down, didn't they?
No, and Ryan Vargas is going to be very mad at you.
Oh, well, sorry, Ryan. I'm gonna throw one out here that's really off the wall. Laguna Seca.
Yeah, it'd probably be good. Yeah.
That's my off the wall.
That's what's fun about NASCAR. Like tracks that you usually can't pass in IndyCar, you just put some fenders on them, and it's like, yeah, if they're gonna pass, they're gonna hit each other, and it's gonna be fun.
40 cars at Laguna Seca would be amazing.
Yeah,
and you can't tell me that it wouldn't be. Taurus with a $20 super chat. The $200 million could raise to $600 million. Yeah, that's something we probably should have talked about. Is the fact they're talking about taxing Andretti even more than they already were going to. Fee for F1. Not spending anything on anything else. That puts Andretti's backers $200 to $600 million in the red right at the start. Think about what that implies for how much ROI F1 brings. Yep. No, Taurus, you're 100% right. Like, if you can demand $600 million, and let's say the FIA finds that to be reasonable, a reasonable like tax or entry fee for F1, $600 million. You're probably going to make that back and then some with an F1 team, or at least that's what they would be projecting. So I'm very curious. I want to talk a little bit about this Andretti thing because Michael definitely stepped in it when he said they were greedy. There's no doubt about it. That was a big mistake. How do you feel about them potentially tripling the price to go into F1 for Andretti? What do you think that means?
It's expected. Like they're just gonna keep moving the goalposts to not let Michael in. Like that's just how it's gonna be. That price is absolutely insane.
Yeah, like that's more than Fontana, right?
Yeah, that's $100 million more than Fontana, which
Michael
means
could have bought
300. He could have bought IMS in the series.
Holy smokes! I didn't even. Oh my god! So hold on. We really wait. I did not even put two and two together. Michael Andretti is about to spend twice what it would have cost to not only buy the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but buy the damn series that he participates in for one F1 team. What? Are you kidding me?
David, and they've been saying, wasn't Andretti one of the top like complainers about the aero kits and how expensive they were?
now this is the real Kyle's trying to get David in trouble. Like, I've already said my piece on this, but yes, yes, you can go back, like it's on record. Michael has complained a few times about cost in IndyCar. Yes, that has happened. That is a fact. I'm not saying anything out of school. You can go and look it up. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is you could buy the damn track and the damn series twice to go F1 racing. So Napa Racing Fan 927 says, "Will Red Bull sell AlphaTauri? If so, Andretti buys." I don't think so. So here's another interesting paddock story. When all that F1 stuff started breaking at Gateway in 2021, Kyle and I seeked out a driver who might have some information on that sort of thing.
Allegedly.
Now, this particular driver, I walked up to and said, "So I've heard Michael's looking at buying Sauber." And this driver said to me, "Well, I heard AlphaTauri," which is very interesting considering who this driver was. Now, as we kind of got down the road, we found out that Colton Herta had been offered to AlphaTauri for this F1 season if they could get him a super license. Now, they were unable to do that, but that would seem to imply to me that AlphaTauri is not for sale. Because why would, and maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but I don't think Red Bull is going to sell AlphaTauri. Turi.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I mean, there's potential there for a possible. I wouldn't say merger is the right word, but like collaboration. It could be Andretti AlphaTauri. You know, it definitely opens the door for that, possibly. But I think Michael wants his own facility. He wants his own team. So I don't think that would be exactly an end goal. Now, that would buying a stake in AlphaTauri. I don't think AlphaTauri, like you said, would be for sale. Buying a stake in AlphaTauri would be the perfect easy foot in the door to get Colton Herta in F1 and get your name in F1 for a few years before you'd finally convince the freaking rest of the teams to let you in. But I don't think that would work either. It's all a mess and it's all stupid.
There's two huge problems with that though. So number one, like it's not just Michael that we need to it's not just Michael that wants to get an F1. Michael has backers, the Guggenheim family, which owns Group 1001 and a baseball team. I can't remember if I think it's the Dodgers, maybe. I could be wrong about that. I think it's the Dodgers. But they're kind of the big money behind Michael Andretti. And now you also have General Motors behind Michael Andretti. This is a lot of money at stake here. And when you have a manufacturer and a title sponsor that are ready to go into F1 right now, going to AlphaTauri and saying, "Hey, we're going to buy, 40%." Like he could have taken the Sauber deal if that's what he wanted to do. But that's not what happened. So I just don't see that happening. I really don't. And I could be wrong. I mean, if there's one thing the Andrettis have been really good about this F1 deal is they have been very good at just like throwing information out there and just breaking the internet. So
you said, I actually didn't know that. So you're telling me that Michael Andretti's IndyCar team has connections to the Dodgers and the Yankees, and the man is from Pennsylvania.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it, yeah. I almost said so. Yeah. So there's, yeah. The two baseball team thing is kind of interesting, but I'll just leave it at that. Justin D says, "Hi, Kyle," for $5.
Hi, Justin.
He did a kissy face, so you've got a fan. SNSD24 for $10 says, "Denny Hamlin spilled on his podcast today that he heard rumors that NASCAR might be looking at groove tires for less grip at the short track to overcome less horsepower. Like to hear your opinions." Wow. That's interesting. F1 tried that and everyone hated it. So I don't know. I don't know about groove tires. I think they should just go back to do they still run I don't think they still run bias ply tires, do they? I'd rather they just go back to bias ply tires. I think that would help.
I always thought groove tires would be a good idea for NASCAR when they were facing their Gen 6 issues with the high downforce. I always thought that, because they never mess with the tires. They never did anything else but change the spoiler and the splitter. And it's like, if you want them to not have as much grip, why don't we try to run groove tires? I never thought about that for IndyCar.
Well, IndyCar, IndyCar. I mean, here's the thing. I've always thought the next big step in terms of IndyCar like development would be to like narrow the tires. I think that would be something that would really challenge the engineers again.
Hmm.
That would take a lot of grip away too. So I think that would be something that I would like to see. Maybe not grooves with Indy cars, but narrowing the tires, narrowing that patch. I think that could be interesting. But
As far as tires goes in IndyCar, they already have enough issues they need to sort out where we have too many races where the reds and the blacks are too similar, and the racing just there's not a tire strategy even. So
well, right, yeah. I mean, yeah, but I think part of it just comes down to stagnation. Like nothing has changed for so long that like everybody's figured everything out.
yeah, that too.
So maybe the tire compounds are just that different and the teams know how to adapt to them. I mean that literally could be part of it. Let's see, where are my super chats? Henry Callahan for 5 says 20 years on from the first St. Pete Champ Car race, 18 since they went to the IRL. I love the races it produces. You think it will be a Ganassi Penske show again? I think there's a possibility. I mean, I don't think it's a total Penske Ganassi show that we're expecting. Like I said, I think there's always a chance someone pops off at St. Pete that we're not expecting. But I will say to your point about how the longevity of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix is really it's turned into one of the classic races in IndyCar. It's a traditional stop on the calendar now. Everybody likes it. The weather's usually pretty good, he says before he knocks on wood. But I'm all about St. Pete. Great race.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect. It's a great city. It's a great track. The layout's fantastic. The weather's, knock on wood, always great. Well, I'm not gonna knock on wood. I won't be there.
Yeah,
So if it rains, I get to just
it's your
watch a
fault.
rain race. I'll be happy. I don't have to sit in the rain.
Well, here's what I said to a friend of ours about St. Pete a couple days ago. Here's the thing about St. Pete. We've already been to the worst one, so like it can't get any worse. So it's all
That's
uphill.
true. That's true. We went to the worst one and possibly the best one in the same year.
That's that's a very good point. That 2020 race was when it actually did happen. Wow, it was. I think Paul Tracy made a reference to it was crazier than the Tiger King, which was one of the all-time
Very
broadcasting
fitting.
lines.
Very fitting for a 2020 race too to say
It
that.
was right up there with the Uber comment. Napa Racing Fan 927 says, "Who wins the IndyCar Championship?" He thinks it's going to be Scotty Mack. We'll start with Kyle, and actually, this probably is a good place to. Oh, Tara sent a super chat, so it's not a place to end it quite yet, but IndyCar Championship.
Oh, Scotty Mac's a good one. Like I mentioned about him, the progression he's had in IndyCar from year 1 to year 2, I think year 3 is probably the first year that I would put Scotty Mac into. I think he could win the championship. But I think Joseph Newgarden's hungrier than ever, and it would be stupid given the stat I saw today. Well, Scotty Mac is a part, it would count, but the Penske and Ganassi have won every single IndyCar championship since 2013. So it would be dumb to not pick a Ganassi or Penske entry. So I got to pick Newgarden. But McLaughlin, to that point, is a good pick.
Well, I do agree that McLaughlin is a good pick. I'm gonna say that I agree. I believe in the Kyle Jinx, and I think it's going to be Marcus Ericsson who wins the championship this year. But honestly, I think again you kind of see with IndyCar a guy will knock on the door and then kick it down the next year. So I kind of feel like Ericsson's due. He's in the right car. He's got the confidence. He's got the team. It's all right there for the taking. But I agree with you, Kyle. Joseph's due. I think we're right about the time where Scott Dixon needs to win another championship because, of course, he does. So all the usual suspects. Let me think of a name to really throw out there that's different. You know what? I want to say Pato.
I can see your mouth about to say a P.
Well, I'm thinking about it. If he figures out consistency, and that's the same thing with Colton. If Pato or Colton figure out consistency, they're going to get super license points, and we'll never see them again.
We barely even we talked about Andretti's dysfunction, like being dysfunctional, but we barely talked about Colton in this episode, which is crazy because last year I would have been only talking about Colton given the season, what he gave us, what he showed us in 2021. So interesting.
Well, I think the problem is the pattern with Colton is you have like 5 races where he's Ayrton Senna, and then 10 races where he's not. And again, if he kind of brings those two extremes kind of to a center point, he's a championship contender. But we have to be careful what we wish for with Colton. Like I said, the minute he gets those super license points, toodaloo. Um,
Yeah.
so, but I think the fact that we're not talking about him probably, I do agree, means that he's going to pop off and win every race and win the championship. But we'll see. We'll see. Where are my damn super chats? Here we go. Taurus for 5 says first time St. Petersburg attendees. What are your 5 tips for the venue? Kyle, what are some tips when you attend St. Pete?
What are what's the food that you see everywhere? What's the
Arepas?
Get the arepas.
Okay.
Definitely spend some time. I wouldn't watch the race there, but spend some time in the park around the back. Just walk around that park. I like morning practice there. I'll put in my headphones and watch and we'll listen to IndyCar radio and just walk around the park. And you'll see 2 or 3 different corners there. I don't expect you to know where this is, but you'll probably seek it out. The little area next to where the entrance to the building where the media center is, there's like a platform there where you're basically looking down at the track, and it's right at the end of the straightaway. I don't know what corner that is, but it's pretty much where they're reaching their top speed that's not on the airfield. So they're flying basically right under you because the
It's
platform you're
noisy.
standing on. Yeah, and it kind of echoes onto the building, so it's very noisy.
Um,
There's also a spot that I found at the end of last year that I wish I knew at the beginning of last year. During the race, uh, I went out to the Road to Indy paddock, which if you cross the bridge, go left like you were trying to get to the outside turn 1 grandstands. If you just walk up to the fence on the entrance of turn 1 on the other side of like where the pits are, you can actually watch the entrance to turn 1 pretty well. I found that out at the finish of last year, and I was like, "Man, wish I would have known about this for the start." So when you get there on Friday, just walk around, seek what spots are the coolest. Stay hydrated. It's hot. It sucks.
yeah,
There
sunscreen is a good
sunscreen.
one. I'm gonna lather up this year. I would say don't. So if you're there just for the race, or hopefully you're there for qualifying and practice, don't run out of the track right after everything's done. Enjoy downtown St. Pete.
Yeah.
Go to a restaurant, go to a bar, get on a scooter and ride around. Like, it is a cool city to be in, and that comes from a person. I'm a country bumpkin, dude, for the most part. Like, I like my wide open spaces, but like St. Pete is a very nice city. And it's a good place, a chill place to spend some time and hang out with friends, or maybe make some new ones.
Yeah, specifically look up the local places because I know David and I every year we'd go to like the Ford's Garage
Sports
and
Garage,
eat.
yep.
Well, that's a chain. Go find like a local restaurant. Go support the local restaurants down there. And not sponsored, but I know that there's the most scooters there. But look up VEO, and just like all you have to do is put in like 15 or $20, and you're good for the weekend. So you can park anywhere in downtown, download the VO app, and ride a scooter. And then like the closest scooter drop off point to the front gate is like just a easy walk away. So at St. Pete, you really don't have to walk much unless you're actually inside the track. But yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about downtown St. Pete. We actually had a go-kart race there not long ago that I got to ride the scooters around the city again. And that's probably the best part of that city, honestly, is you can just get anywhere you want to. Best restaurant recommendation. There's a restaurant
I
on
know exactly where you're going with this.
if you look out I don't remember the name of it, and that's not very helpful.
It's the
But
one on the pier. It's the one
yeah,
way you have to walk all the way down this
it's
pier.
not hard. If you look on Google Maps, it's not hard to find on the pier. There's a restaurant on the pier. There's actually a bar on the very top of the building. So there's like a bar on the top, restaurant in the middle, and the bottom's just a pier. But all of it is awesome. The bar is awesome. The pina coladas are amazing. And then the restaurant is incredible. So good. And plus you're out on the water. We did it at sunset last year, and that was awesome.
Well, it's cool too because you can see the planes coming in
Yeah,
to the airport, and really you can kind of see the track from there. I would
kind
not
of.
recommend watching the race from there, but it's a cool place to go uh, in the evening for sure. We went to a good burger place downtown St. Pete too. I
Yeah.
wish I remember the name of that
That
in
was 2 years
2020.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But we definitely in
If you
2020 we really we spent a lot of time in St. Pete, so we learned a lot about the local
Yeah, we did.
culture
If you
there.
just honestly walk around, there's a lot of restaurants, ride the scooters around. There's a lot of restaurants in places, like, they'll have restaurants that have, like, just, like, garage doors on the side that just they just open up, the weather's nice, and you can just ride the scooters around and find a restaurant that, think looks decent to you, and it's a nice city.
We got one final super chat from Henry Callahan, and he says Indy teams ought to score a championship point for a fire livery like Scotty's Penske. Well, Scott changes his car every race, so I don't know which livery you're talking about.
I don't know, all of them are pretty great, let's be honest.
Um,
The
I
the the ones that are plain are like the Dex and the Odyssey car. But like if you
those are
think
the ones
about
he
it,
wins in, though.
Gallagher, he won with the Freightliner car at Portland. The Freightliner
That's
car
right, he
looks
did.
amazing.
Yeah, that's a cool car.
The
That
Gallagher
one's
car looks
fire in person.
amazing. The Penzo car looks amazing. The Penzo car looks freaking awesome on the road course aero kit.
Boy, I sure wish it was 1988 and just he was Pennzoil the whole year.
Me too.
I know, boomer take, but man, and that was the other thing I realized looking at, and we'll kind of tie the show together here. Looking at the 2005 IndyCar season, really as a whole, but just looking back on that season, the liveries didn't change. Like Dan Weldon runs the Klein Tools Jim Beam car the entire year. Tony Kanaan is in the 7-Eleven car the entire year. The Target cars are the same the entire year. Even the back markers, the Red Bull cars, same the entire year. Rockstar Energy car, same the entire year. Pennzoil, that changed a little bit, but they went back to the yellow car before the end of the year. Like the ethanol car was the same the whole year. Like the Vision cars, I guess, swapped their livery a little bit. But like the car, like every race you watched, the cars were the same and the paint jobs were the same, I should say, and that's a big help. I think a bigger help than a lot of people I think realize. So I know I've complained about it before; it's fallen on deaf ears, but I really wish we could get to more a place where the drivers drive the same car every weekend. But big weekend of racing, Kyle. Can you even begin to list all of the races that are
Uh
able to be seen this week?
well, we know Supercross is racing. We know we have IndyCar at St. Pete. This is an NBC race, isn't it?
NBC, yep. Most of the season's
Big
on NBC.
NBC.
Yeah. The only races that
Uh
are not on NBC are the Peacock race at Toronto, and then the Indy GP in the second Indy GP race, Road America and Mid Ohio are on USA Network, but every other race is on NBC.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but NASCAR has all 3 series at Las Vegas. So a
Yeah, because
whole
Kyle
weekend
Busch
of
is
racing
racing in
there.
all of them.
Yeah, a whole weekend of racing on that front. And then we have F1 at Bahrain. So 10
And that
a.m.
means
ESPN.
all three rungs of their series are running.
I believe so.
And that also means IndyCar on Peacock. You can watch Indy next. I actually got it right. And that also means on YouTube, you can watch what used to be called the Indy Pro, but now it's
Well, it used to be the Road to Indy, and now it's the USF Pro Championships.
yes. So, but
So
you
you
can
can
watch those
watch
on YouTube, I believe.
you can watch USF Juniors, which is kind of new for this year. I think USF Juniors
They
is
were
going to be
not
at
at
St.
St.
Pete,
Pete last year,
but
so
they were
that's
running. They were a little quick information on them. They were running like F4 cars last year, and now they have like a proper Tatis chassis. So it's like proper USF juniors this year. So I think they're running I think they're running at St. Pete. I could be wrong.
We're spreading stop spreading misinformation on the internet.
I said I might be wrong. So
I'll tell you what, if the little kids do run St. Pete, boy oh boy, Titus is going to make a lot of money because
we have USF 2000 as usual this year. Look out for Matt Clark. Look out for my boy Simon Sykes. He's actually in a Pabst car this year. He's taking over the Miles car from last year. So
and Simon almost won the race last year. In fact, I believe he crashed with Miles for the lead.
And it's a good story because he doesn't know if he can make it past St. Pete, but if he has a good race, then things look good. So look out for him because he's in probably the best car in the series, and on a one race deal. So we'll see. USF Pro 2000, Miles Rowe has looked really good in testing.
And one of the fastest drivers of last year.
Yeah. And there's
Michael D'Orlando would be the other one.
The testing at Sebring had 20 cars in the USF Pro entry list, which is big ups from like the last 3 years. I don't expect that to stay the same all year, but that's interesting note that I saw on the testing. I want to talk about this really quick because this is fun. So Christian Brooks ran in practice last year, ended up tubbing the car, and that was it basically for a season. Now this year, so he has shown back up on the entry list. Guess who his sponsor is, David?
Who's the sponsor?
OnlyFans.
Wait,
he is sponsored.
Who?
Christian Brooks is sponsored by OnlyFans.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh, dude.
He is featured on OnlyFans profile. Like there are posts of him on OnlyFans profile now. That's how real this is.
Well, I know where I'm beelining. I know exactly which tent I'm heading for first.
So go say hi to Brooks, David. Go say hi to.
We're not only going to say hi to Brooks. He might be getting his own video because I think that's that's some content right there.
Go say hi to Christian for me.
For sure. I'm absolutely going to say hi. Now, we get trolled every now and then. Is that actually the real SK Money in the chat? Do we think? Is that really Sage? If it is, hi, Sage.
No,
if it's not, hi, person pretending to be Sage. So the other thing to your car count point, and eventually we will actually get off the air, I guess. But car counts up across the board. IndyCar at 27. NXT, I believe, is around 18, I think. 20 for Pro, and then I'm sure there's even more in what the hell are we calling it? 2000?
It's USF 2000. You have USF 2000 and USF Pro 2000. There's one word difference.
Way too complicated.
Yeah.
But
one, you have to remember, one's USAC and one is IndyCar. So there's 3 USAC rungs in IndyCar. They're USF Pro. The USF Pro Championships are having a race at Sebring this year, and Coda. They're not following the whole IndyCar schedule this year.
That's right. Well, yeah, there's all sorts of drama. I remember we heard about that USAC thing way before it happened. Way before it happened. Well, okay. There is a ton of racing coming up your way, especially on this channel. I think I'm going to average around a video a day, probably more, as I continue to find out things like the fact that there's going to be an OnlyFans car at St. Pete. I think that is just hilarious, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on there. But yeah, no. So look for that 2005 St. Pete video coming out. I should have an IndyCar preview of some sort. I want to do a paddock tour, and then obviously going to be doing the daily breakdowns at St. Pete. Unfortunately, Kyle, as you heard, will not be with us at St. Pete, but I imagine we'll see you pretty soon at the racetrack. And of course, we'll hear from you on the David Land podcast very soon. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next podcast.